the step-aside principle continues to plague the ANC. Weekend reports suggest the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting was tense, with heated debates over whether members who face criminal charges should step aside. Other issues troubling the party include the RET Forces faction and the Public Protector and MK Veterans Association spokesperson Carl Niehaus. For more now, let me take you live now to eNCA's Sipamandla Goke, who is on standby with the ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe. And Sipa, I rue the hours that I wasted yesterday waiting for that, what was meant to be the closing remarks by the president. That didn't happen. 2 hours after they were said to have gotten underway. Any idea as to when the president will finally deliver those closing remarks, or at the very least, when we will hear from the ANC, or its members will hear from the ANC, what came out of the NEC meeting?
More hours for you, Tula Sizwe, and our viewers to wait, because I can tell you that as we speak, the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, will not be delivering those closing remarks, at least up until this evening. We understand that they will resume at 5 o'clock with their NEC meeting. There's been a stalemate, you know, there are phrases that are being thrown around here, robust discussions, you know, there is what many people call a stalemate. They say it was tense. But simply put, there are deep divisions and disagreements on the issue of the step-aside principle when it comes to those members of the organization who are facing criminal charges. Let me not waste too much of your time, because the man who speaks for the ANC is here. His name is Pule Mabe. Pule, thank you very much for your time, my brother. Why has your meeting not concluded as we speak? We understand that you were supposed to wrap up your meeting yesterday. We were expecting those closing remarks from the president. It has not happened. Why?
Good day, Spamandla. Just to perhaps give context that the National Executive Committee started on Friday the 26th of March, and it was to conclude on Sunday the 28th. I think we underestimated the amount of time required to process and deal with the work that was before the National Executive Committee. We had to attend to the vaccine rollout, get reports on COVID-19, deal with tertiary education funding, attend to reports by the Integrity Commission, receive feedback from the national officials on the finalization of the National Youth Task Team, which they had been requested to attend to, working together with provinces, fill a vacancy in the National Working Committee. So it was quite, it was quite weighty issues that the National Executive Committee had to attend to. Consistent with practice, what happens is that at the conclusion of the NEC, there will be a recordal of decisions that will be read out for purposes of ratification or addition if something might have been omitted in the process. Once that is done, a closing address then follows, which is then delivered by the President of the African National Congress, capturing some of the critical decisions. Then the following day, you would then have the Secretary General who would then issue what we normally did even before COVID conditions. We'll have a press briefing, and in that press briefing, we'll then be able to now elaborate on all decisions taken by the National Executive Committee. And then from there, we issue what we call an NEC bulletin, which goes to all our structures, because some of the decisions we take have got a bearing on the life of the organization on the ground. So structures ought to be given that kind of a benefit as well.
What agenda item is missing now? We understand that most of the agenda items have been dealt with, but there is one on the stepping aside policy or resolution. Is that the only agenda item that will be discussed when you resume at 5?
Well, we did not necessarily, because I was worried, because you are not the first journalist to actually locate the issue of step aside on the agenda of the NEC. I think we do not have such an agenda item on our own agenda of the national. We have already shared with yourselves what we would have had. I mean, when we spoke to the media on Friday, I think eNCA was represented there as well. We had shared all the issues that are going to really be at the center of this National Executive Committee, which was the COVID-19 and the vaccine rollout, which was tertiary education funding, and then there was an issue that I spoke to as well of the ANC Youth League and YTT, the filling of the NWC vacancy.
But let us put it to you that there is that agenda item on the stepping aside. It's being discussed in the meeting.
No. An issue does not need to be on the agenda for it to be discussed. You know, because to help you as a leader of the African National Congress, who has been for years now, that the issue would have come across as part of the discussions of the Integrity Commission reports. So I was trying to take you there so that you can locate it within context.
It's still outstanding. It's not been finalized.
Well, almost everything that was discussed in the National Executive Committee would be outstanding up until such time that we convey and communicate our decisions out to the public. Remember, what we have never done, which we are not about to do today, is that we have never come out and spoken to the media about discussions in the NEC. What we always do ourselves as spokespersons of the African National Congress is to come out there and make sure that we communicate decisions of the ANC.
When are ANC members going to know? When are they going to have those closing remarks by the president of the organization?
The expectation is that if everything goes well as planned today, the NEC should reconvene at 7. And the reason why we're not reconvening earlier is because comrades in the ANC, for instance, the president of the African National Congress is also the president of the Republic. He has got other issues of national importance that he has to be dealing with. He's out in the Eastern Cape attending to the issue of vaccine manufacturing, going to some site visits there, which is a very important work that we expect the leadership of government to be doing to safeguard lives as well. And then we will meet later early in the evening. We should be meeting around 19 hours.
Does it worry you, though, that there is this speculation that there are reports about the NEC meeting, having this robust engagement? I know you will tell me that that is in the nature of democracy and debate in the ANC. But on this stepping aside principle and policy, what is being reported right now is that there is a stalemate.
Well, I don't know where the notion of stalemate comes from, because we are spokespersons of the African National Congress. We have agreed to speak to yourselves to give you an update to the extent that the National Executive Committee will be meeting this evening to finalize on the business of the National Executive Committee. Once that conclusion has been arrived at, we'll then be able to communicate decisions of the NEC out in the public.
Did the issue of former President Jacob Zuma and Zondo Commission, was it discussed in this meeting?
Well, like I said, I don't want to be tempted to reflect on discussions in the NEC, because that will introduce a very dangerous culture. All the discussions in the NEC would be captured into what are decisions and then conveyed out to the public, something that we expect to do between today and tomorrow.
Was the issue of former President Jacob Zuma and the Zondo Commission discussed, Paul?
Hence, I am saying that we are not going to be getting into the terrain of discussions of the NEC. We're not about to do that.
But also equally so, South Africans are saying you are busy with your internal squabbles. The country is facing serious socio-economic challenges. You mentioned the issue of vaccination. The vaccination plan has not started in South Africa, and government has considered that it's likely going to basically not meet its own deadline when it comes to vaccination targets. Surely, as the ANC, the governing party, that must worry you.
Of course, we are quite concerned. We have received a report from Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who is also a member of the National Executive Committee. We will be able to also reflect on the position of the party when we disseminate our decisions out to the public.
So when are we likely to hear from you as the leadership of the ANC about the outcomes of the NEC meeting in closing?
Well, Spamandla, we are expecting that if the NEC meets at 7, if it concludes its work today, it should be able to then communicate its decisions out to the public.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Well, Tula Sizwe, there you have it. That is Pule Mabe, who is the spokesperson of the African National Congress, basically trying to downplay this discussion about the stepping aside principle and the discussion involving the Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule. But we'll keep on monitoring this story, Tula Sizwe, and by this evening, we expect to hear from the President of the ANC about the outcomes of the NEC meeting.